Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. It's the second one today. I'm on a wee run, right? And the topic of this one is me having a consideration to the fact that John Swinney might have had a reality check and realised that his party's going to take a doing at the upcoming Westminster election. Now, the reason I say that, he was on an interview earlier on today where he was posed some serious questions on what would be an acceptable result in the upcoming election. And you could probably read a wee bit into the way he's answered it as to his real expectations. Now, the Daily Express have picked up on this interview that he gave, and they've written an article about it, and I'll go through their article and put my own opinions in as I go along. So their headline is John Swinney lets cat out the bag as SNP braces itself for huge losses at general election. The NAP leader appeared to admit his party is heading for heavy losses on July the 4th, as he insisted his objective was merely to win the most Scottish seats. John Swinney seems to admit the SNP is facing huge losses, as he set his party target less than 2 weeks from the vote, and that leader has consistently said if the SNP wins a majority of seats in Scotland, that would be enough to trigger an independence negotiation. But asked on Sunday what success would be for the party, he suggested simply winning the most seats was his aim. It is a strong hint that the Nats are braced for losing dozens of seats after 9 years of dominance. The SNP won 56 out of the 59 seats available in 2015, and even big losses in 2017 couldn't stop them emerging with a majority of Scottish seats. In 2019, the party recovered to win 48 seats, but polling suggests they've fallen behind Labour in the polls. It's understood Mr Swinney still believes a majority of Scottish seats would be needed to trigger a second independence referendum, but he seems sceptical his party can even achieve that. Now that would be 29 seats, because we now have 57 Scottish seats. Aye, so we need 29, right, to get the majority of them. Speaking to LBC, he said his objective was merely to become the largest party in Scotland. He added, and that would be the largest party in terms of seats. He had earlier told the BBC's Laura Kuenssberg that independence was essential for Scotland and refused to answer when asked if he would accept the SNP not winning the election in Scotland was a signal from the Scottish people that didn't want another referendum. This is quite a good point, because this is something I've been suggesting for weeks since they decided that this was how they were going to sort of have a de facto referendum and base it on the number of seats. And I said, well, all along, does that mean if they get less than 29 seats, that's the Scottish people telling them to bugger off, for no really interested in independence? And then they go a bit quiet. So it's to want both sides of the rule here. If they get more than 29, then that's their version of we demand a referendum. If they get less than 29, that doesn't mean that folk don't want a referendum. They're bonkers. They're warped. Only the most narcissistic of people would want to call heads and tails on a coin toss. And that's exactly what they're doing. So, where are we? Instead, he reiterated his belief that his party has a mandate from the 2021 Holyrood election. Despite the constitution not being a devolved issue, Scottish Conservative Chairman Craig Hoy said the Scottish public will be dismayed to hear John Swinney again double down on the SNP's independence obsession. I don't think they are. We're just bored with it and fed, we expect it now. Breaking up the UK is his top priority, and he insisted he will use every seat the SNP wins to pursue it. But there's a huge opportunity for voters to end the SNP's demand for independence for good by voting Scottish Conservatives in key seats up and down the country. If elected, Scottish Conservative MPs will focus on the issues that matter to ordinary Scots, like fixing or ailing public services and growing the economy. Issues which have been shamefully ignored by the SNP. I agree with that. And this is a thing that I agree with. The Tories up here can't win the election, even if you're taking in this, the 57 Scottish seats. But what they can do is they could take maybe half a dozen or so seats off the SNP. And these are very tight seats. they won't win any by massive margins if they win any at all. But the big fear I have is reform. Now, I'm no anti-reform, so don't jump in that bandwagon with what I'm about to say. But I think it's safe to suggest that any reform voters are more likely to come from Tories. So in the sort of 5 or 6 seats where there's a fine balance between polls between Tory and SNP, if the Tories lose votes to reform in these circumstances, then it could be enough to get SNP some wins. And perversely enough, even in the seats where Tory aren't the best challenge to SNP, people voting for reform are going to dilute the vote against, anybody who's the suggested tactical voting option. And that's something I think could help SNP win a few seats across Scotland. Is this a resurgence of reform? And as I say, I'm not anti-reform. I think Michael Farage is quite a leader. I think a lot of the policies make sense, and I like common sense and logic. So I'm not anti-reform, but I don't think they could win a single seat in Scotland. But what they could do is take enough votes off another party who could end up coming second to SNP, and in effect give the SNP some votes. So I intend to do a sort of longer video on this subject over the next few days as we get closer to the actual election, because I think it has to be considered. A vote for reform in Scotland is not going to change anything. It's not going to get many seats. It's not going to change anything positively, but it could have some negative implications if the SNP wins some close seats. So if you want to tactically vote and your prime aim in this election is to get rid of the SNP, then reform could actually perversely go against that notion. And what you could be doing is voting for a party who can't win, who can't challenge SNP, and in turn gift the SNP some seats. So I'm going to be doing some more videos, and I'm going to have a discussion live on X on Thursday night with Basil, who's our ex-host, and we're going to discuss tactical voting, why we should be doing it, and the effects of it, positive and negatively. And that'll be live on X Thursday night. If you are on X and you want to take part in that, just grab my follow me, like my email, my Twitter number thing, whatever the bloody things are called, it's up there, and you'll get notified when the debate's going to take place. And the reform thing will be a topic on that, but I also plan to do some more tactical voting videos over the next couple of weeks, because very few people have voted yet by postal vote. The vast majority of people will be voting at polling stations on the 4th. So plenty of time to look at tactical voting and things like that. But the X thing will be quite a good. These X spaces are fantastic because people can come up and ask you quite good questions. You can have some good debates. There's very few lunatics in them, so they don't end up screaming matches. They end up good conversations, and certainly Basil, the host, does they tolerate any shite. So, it'll be a good forum for anybody, whether they're unionist or nationalist, who are concerned about where to vote come the 4th of July. It's a bit easier for nationalists, to be fair, because they will have in quite a lot of constituencies an option nowadays which is bearable to them, and that is voting not for someone they term wrongly as a unionist party. They now will have an option of voting for Alba as an alternative to SNP. And there's this notion, which is quite daft as far as I'm concerned, where a lot of nationalists feel they're some way traitors and have led to be believed they're traitors if they vote for a unionist party, which basically for years was anybody other than the SNP. So we'll discuss that, and we'll discuss how I feel reform could affect the vote up here, and the result up here, and the reasons why we should tactically vote, and how practical the aim of bankrupting the SNP is. And if everybody who doesn't like the SNP held their nose and voted tactically in the upcoming elections, SNP simply wouldn't win a seat. That's basic fact. That's how mathematics work and simple arithmetic. And I understand that's difficult for a lot of people, but tactically voting can make massive, massive results possible. So, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing and hitting the notifications bell. But most importantly of all, unless you're John Swinney, the SNP, or any of the dwindling remaining cult members, everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.